So the natural question that comes to mind when you play Last Day of June is, what would you do to save the one you love? What should I have done to prevent this thing from happening? And The Last Day of June is a game about love and loss. It tells the story of a guy named Carl who loses his wife in a car crash. Carl discovers the power to travel back in time through the paintings of June. She's a painter, by the way. You know, the player is actually playing through the other characters, through the villagers that inhabit the village and that somehow had a minor role in causing the crash.
Sometimes just pop in our mind that if we can go back in time and change something that happened in our past, would be awesome. And that's exactly what we want to talk about in Last Day of June.
We came up with this idea of the Groundhog Day gameplay mechanic to let the player experience different combinations of events and of facts in the hope of changing the course of events that led ultimately to the crash.
And for Carl, it's the same thing. It's about going back and what if this event would have changed, would have saved June? And so the gameplay was designed around this feeling, this question. It's choices and small actions that together build up a response and change the present.
We like to tell stories that we care about. For us, making sure that the player feels exactly what the character actually feels within the game has been sort of like the focus of our development process. And that's been the most challenging part, translating emotions into gameplay mechanics and not just applying emotion to gameplay mechanics. That's a different stance.
So that was actually quite a long journey. When we started, we just wanted to make a game about Carl reliving the memories of June and the accident that took place. But then we kind of wanted to try and made it so that when you relive these memories, the actions you would take would change how the accident actually happened. And we realized, why don't we take that and make that the core of the game, right? Why don't we make it so Carl is obsessing over this accident about what could have saved June's life, right?
So the real challenge for us has been to use gameplay mechanic as an actual tool to deliver emotions. That means that the gameplay itself must be somehow linked and deeply intertwined with the empathy that the player feels towards the characters and towards the story and towards all the situations that you find yourself into.
So to me, it's all about trying to find a way to reflect how the main character is feeling or what the main theme is. And in a way, the fact that you have to constantly try to think about what combinations and what events will lead to a certain result and try to avoid the crash is very similar to what Carl is doing while thinking about June, right? Thinking about the past, how it could have changed and how he could have saved his wife. The idea is kind of to try to use puzzles and mechanics to put you in Carl's shoes.
We choose painting as core tools to travel back in time for two main reasons. The first one is June is a painter, so it was basically her expression tool. The second reason is basically because painting represents somehow reality as seen from the eyes of somebody else. And we have a very diverse team, you know, some people are coming from the game industry, some people are not, so we are able to bring to the table different inspirational sources that comes from movies, from music, or from arts in general. We wanted the game to look a little bit childish and to look really colorful because it creates a very nice contrast with the deep and hypothetically sad subject of the story.
We wanted to make everything look like a painting, to give it even a more of a dreamy, hazy feeling to the whole aesthetic.
So we developed an internal shader that we finally called the Marmalade shader that basically acts as a sort of like artistic processing of the whole rendering scene.
At the very beginning of the project, we wanted to do a more pencil-like drawing. But while testing the shader, we came up with this new effect Instead of going for the full pencil mode, we went for a more artistic brush, impressionistic style.
It's cartoonish, but at the same time it has a very realistic photography, and that's done on purpose, because it feels like we were filming with cameras somehow, a sort of like hand-painted miniature where the scene happens. We also developed the characters in a different way so that they look a little bit like, you know, they're tall but they have this big, huge head with shallow eyes, and I guess it's the trademark art style of the game itself.
We try to build on the feeling of unease that you kind of feel while playing the game. You see the characters actually don't have any eyes, they don't have the eyeball, and that makes them a bit scary. But at the same time, they're very goofy, they're adorable, and we try to make them a bit lovable. And this is to kind of instill this feeling of not really being sure about what's going on, right? Why are they so scary and yet so cute at the same time? And that's, I guess, kind of like one of the main emotions of the game, melancholy and being weirdly in love with this sad feeling.
I think a game like Last Day of June can add to video game culture the notion that games can talk to people without shouting to people, that you can show a story and not just tell a story, that you can deal with normal subject, with everyday life subject, without having to resort to special effects or explosions, and still be able to, you know, reach your audience.